This is a fairly busy model, but I want to take the chance of something that has a lot of information on it and a lot of groups, and look at what we can do to materialize this, as well as looking at a little bit of lighting, a little bit of textures. Okay, so a few things that definitely want to be leather. We should make leather. Matcap Gorilla for black is pretty exciting and pretty interesting stuff. I don't really want to spend too much time and get high detailed, mostly just like how to apply different materials. Let's start by doing this. I'm going to use the RGB, or actually the M for material, RGB for paint, mRGB for material, and RGB color, right? So click on color, fill object, and now, see if I were to change this to Matcap Pearl, you'll notice that the seat stays the same. I can change the color around. Everything changes the same except for what's on a different poly group. And in here, maybe I go back and use one of these metals for that little cylinder. So let's use that. We'll say mRGB, color, fill object. Okay, so now let's go back to this seat and just kind of play with different areas. So this piece right here, oops, come down here to Control and Shift, select Rect, there we go. And swipe that. I think this could go out quite a ways, so I'm going to shrink the selection until it gets about where it should be. So under, wow, deep down in here, under visibility, I think this whole area in here should all be metal, so continue to shrink until it gets out to where I think it should be. See if we get lucky. That's a lot of shrinking. Oh, now it's starting to creep around the corner. It might be more than I want it to be. So toggle that selection. And let's just get rid of this last little bit. Okay. So there's a little stray thing right there too. Okay, let's take all this stuff, go back to this metal, and say color, fill object, as well as I just want to group this too, so group visible, so it'll be easier to select in the future. Select that piece right there. Let's grow that, or actually, yeah, let's grow it. So grow out a little bit. Grow. Looks like it's blending into the other one. How's that? Okay, I think that's going to be about right. So I'm going to take this piece right here and change this to another material. And we'll use the Matcap Pearl. Color, fill object. And I think let's group that visible as well to make it easier to select. Toggle that off. All this geometry back here as well as this. Well, I take it back. I'm going to leave that one as leather, as it's just coming all the way around here. I'll take that right there and assign another texture here. Let's go back to the metals. Color, fill object. Now this, I'm just going to make a few modifications. Go to the move brush. Just seems like all this stuff right here is just pulling over the top of itself. There we go. It's just a difficult intersection. Take this piece, which is the troublemaker, and I'm just going to soften that, I think. Smooth that out and let that kind of flow better. Okay. Now, obviously there's other materials in here. Oops. Let's take this piece, and that piece, and this piece, and make that one object, so group visible. And I think I could select this and this. Let's try something a little crazier and use the red. Fill object. It did not work. mRGB. Fill object. Ooh, that's crazy. Take that. Make that very reflective and fill that. A bit more interesting. This back here maybe should also go. Alright, let's take this stuff and make it maybe a white. Leather. There we go. That's really broken up and a bit crazy, but kind of interesting. RGB, color, fill object. There we go. Whew. So that's how you would break this up into different main materials. Rendering that. Yeah, that's just so much. So much to look at. It's just not fair. And RGB. Yeah, the red was just so much. Couldn't take it anymore. It's a little bit darker. Object, there we go. Okay. Now, lastly, I want to take this piece right here and let's mask it. I'm going to soften the mask so it bleeds in a little bit and apply a texture. So, if we come down here to our surface, noise, tumble this around a little bit so I can see it. Oh, actually undo that. Cancel. I want to invert that mask now. Noise. And let's change the scale on this. The strength, I'm going to push that up quite a bit so it's easy to see. Pull the color blend down here so I can see that as well. Now, by default, there's some just noise. It's kind of neat, but it's just noise. If I click on the noise plugin, however, now there's all kinds of different shapes. I do like the corrugated, it's pretty neat. By default right now it's hard to see. Change the size. You can begin to see what's happening over there. I want to rotate this a bit, so let's see if we were to change this in the Y. Not that way. Let's go back to about 0. There we go. Let's just do this about 90 degrees. And look at some of these other shapes. Ribbons, sawtooth. I get that a little more exact. That should be about right. Hit OK, and in here I've got a little more opportunity to play with exactly the size I want to use, exactly the strength I want to use, and I can blend the color a little bit darker here too. Okay. If I zoom in, it's got these little ribbons going both ways. But because we blended, we have blend into the seat, the mask, it should blend out as it goes towards the edge. If I invert this, notice that goes everywhere. Do one more there. Okay. So it might look pretty cool. When it renders, it should also be there. But if I wanted that actually in a model, we're going to need to do something else. Actually, I'm going to take that off. It's change that from that sawtooth to, let's go back to sine. Okay. Okay. Just let that kind of bubble. Alright, if I wanted to actually turn this into geometry, there's two ways to do it. I could just hit apply to mesh. Sometimes that works well. In this case, it does not work at all because there's not enough geometry. So what we need to do is change this from 74,000 to a much higher level. And I don't really want to do that with the entire thing. I just want to do it to this little piece. So let's do this. Select just this piece, and I want to actually split this out. So split hidden. And now we can toggle off everything in here. That guy doesn't need any noise at all, just this piece right here. And if I come up here, it's going to be a little easier to play with. So coming back down to our noise, we could apply to mesh, but right now I need to change the geometry, so divide. And 500,000 should do the trick here. Apply to mesh, it's probably going to go, well, it's actually not too bad. It made it a little bit large. Notice how it's poking out of the corners. We need to reapply that, a little bit of a mask to this. So before I do that, in this case I'm just going to paint my mask on. Anywhere where there's a mask, it will be completely non-existent, and where there's not a mask, it will fall off. So just paint all this everywhere, except on the edges. Great. Okay. So I drop my resolution down here a little ways and blur that one time. Invert this mask, blur it towards the edges. That's probably close. Oops, undo that. Now I can raise this subdivision level back up. And let's apply this mask finally. So apply to mesh. And now it just blends right up to the edge of that. I'm going to be a little more severe. I'm going to mask by noise as opposed to applying it, and then we can come to our deformation tab and inflate or deflate to taste. So make it look like good grips. Seat, in case it wasn't busy enough. Actually, let's suck that in. I think that's a little crazy. It's a little crazy either way. That's way crazy. No problem. Alright. Let me make that stuff black too. Go, color, fill object. I like that. Little accent ring. Okay, that's much more interesting. Alright. There you go. I think I've covered most of the features I want to talk about, and we can try doing one more design.